Um, so let's transition a little bit to talking about building a team, right? And a lot of different teams go different routes in building a team. And you remember I talked to you about what do you think the Lakers look like with all of the talent that they've let go that started to flourish, like your Julius Randle, who made his first All-Star team this year. You have your Brandon Ingram, who made his first All-Star last year. Lonzo, who has a pulse. Jordan Clarkson, one of the reasons why, Utah's doing what they're doing because of the way he's scoring off the bench. He finally has a coach who say, George, you go out there and score. That's all we want you to do. Don't worry about anything else. And then you look at Toronto. Toronto, they did the nice slow build. They took their lick, and then they finally made a move for Kawhi. They get a ring. And now we see that Toronto, granted, this season has been tough. It's hard to evaluate teams on what they are this year. But Toronto may just fall apart. Like, there's rumors that they may be moving off of Kyle Lowry. They may be moving off of Siakam, for a full and total rebuild. But they walk away with a ring. Then you have the Lakers who have drafted decently well, but have made their money in free agency and retooling through free agency. And then you see what's going on in Boston. Boston's in the Eastern Conference Finals with almost every year. Mm-hmm. But have we ever looked at Boston and thought they had a chance to win a championship since 08? I mean, excuse me, really since 2010? Since 10. And I asked myself, what's the right way to build a team? Because after Boston absolutely fleeced the Brooklyn Nets are now a title contender, and Boston has not been one since that trade. And we praise Danny Ainge for the consistency, but I'm starting to think that over there in Boston, they've been too consistent to get anybody fired, but they're not winning championships, and that's what we play the game for.
I think it's a combo of the two. So, if you look at the great teams we've had in the past, the Warriors did their slow build, and then they won in 15. And then 16 was one of the best teams we've ever seen. And they lost, and they added KD, and then, the rest is history. So theirs was a combo of the slow build plus free agency. You look at the Lakers now, theirs is all free agency. But then you look at Toronto, slow build. They added Kawhi, and that was a trade, but they added Kawhi and Danny Green. It's, I think, got to be a combo of the two. The Lakers is actually the one I would avoid because, and maybe this is just the LeBron effect, every time LeBron goes to a team, and he's been the best player we've ever seen of our generation, you're going to do whatever you can do to get LeBron. And then other people are going to come. And then once LeBron deems this is over, he's going to leave and the team is going to crater. The one time I think that didn't happen as bad was in Miami, and they imploded the next year. But Bosh and Wade were hurt. And a lot of people don't remember that. Bosh missed a good bit of games. And then the year right after that, they were in the playoffs again.
Yeah, and Bosh's career pretty much ended after LeBron left because of his illness,
Yeah.
And
but Cleveland's been trash both times after LeBron left. They were bad, got Kyrie, then LeBron came back. But when LeBron leaves teams, they're devastated. When Kawhi left Toronto, they were really good last year. This year, they've had some injuries. So I think for the most part, when you lose a star, sometimes it's not always as bad. And then Boston's, I think, tried to do both. They were trying to get AD. They were trying to get PG. And if they actually had one out in those sweepstakes with their slow build plus these guys, we're talking about them in a completely different light too.
But my question is, were they actually trying to get those guys? Because we hear Boston in all of these conversations, right? But they never make the move. They never ever win the trade, they never make the big trade happen. And I think it may be because they're always trying to win the trade. And you know what? Sometimes it's about getting a good player. A lot of these teams value, all these picks. Let me tell you something that's better than a pick. An all-NBA player that is an all-NBA player. Some people were like, oh, man, you can't trade Jamal Murray to get James Harden.
Yes, you can.
What?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Or we don't want to let go of Jaylen Brown for James Harden. I mean, I see that Jaylen's an all-star. He's been your best player this year. If James is agreeing to a contract extension, I love you, Jaylen. But have fun in Houston with John Wall.
Yeah. That's what you get those players for. And I think it's funny. So like you're hoarding all these picks and you're like, well, we have these. What are you saving them for? So like my fiance and I, we just bought a house. And then she was like, we just really like crushed our savings. We spent a lot of money. And I'm like, that's what we were saving for. We didn't just buy a pair of shoes. We bought a house. So when people are saying like hoarding picks, that's what you hoard the picks for, to flip them. Because yes, these players that you're going to draft, it could turn out to be a Jason Tatum, but it could also turn out to be an Anthony Bennett. So you acquire these picks, flip them, get them out and get a proven player. And that's the problem that Boston has. They don't use those picks to get players. They don't throw in enough. I thought the Lakers put in too much to get AD. Then it turned out to be a championship. And I was like, I guess it wasn't too much. At some point, if you give up too much and you get back an AD, you get back a James Harden, it was all worth it.
And the thing that gets me with these picks, it's like, okay, so you're building for the future. And who's gotten rich off of their 401k?
Not me. Still waiting.
You know what I mean? Like, who has gotten rich off of having a nice savings account?
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. And you got to make a move. You got to take a plunge because guess what? In today's NBA with brands and player empowerment, yeah, Jason Tatum's going to sign that extension that he just signed. Jaylen Brown signs that extension. Why? Because they don't want to mess up their money. They got to get that 7 years, with your original team. But after that, bro, it's like, hey, Danny, get me out of here. Brad Stevens. Oh, we love Brad Stevens, right? But, I mean, no. Hold on. My computer's about to restart. But, Brad, are you getting the most out of your team now? I mean, you got the most out of IT before he fell apart. Mm-hmm. But are you getting the most out of the guys that you have on the roster? And maybe not. And some people say, well, Brad wants to play like the 14 Spurs. Well, guess what? Brad doesn't have that personnel.
He doesn't.
He has 2 on-ball guards who can go get a bucket. Make it work. Or how about this? Appease Gordon Hayward to say, hey, we're going to put the ball in your hands a little bit more. We're going to adjust these rotations so that you can do what you do because they're now missing a 6'8 playmaker because Kim was a shell of himself or has been a shell of himself so far. I think he's working himself back into shape. My man Marcus Smart has been hurt, but do we really want to trust and rely on Marcus Smart to be the reason why we're a contender? I don't. So I just look at Danny, and I've been off of Danny Ainge for years just because his one title I'm not going to call it fool's gold, but it's GM fool's gold, right?
I still wouldn't even say that. Like he finessed, and granted, like his homeboy Mikhail hooked him up.
Yes.
But that team should have probably won another one. And like that just goes back to how I always will think, like, I love Doc, I think he's a great coach, but he underperforms. But I think you have to make that move, and it was a great move on his part. And then the moves he's made since, he hasn't made any big splashes in free agency. They traded back and got Jason Tatum. Like, that was a great pick.
Great pick, but you fleeced Philly because I remember this like in the moment. I'm like, why is Jason Tatum not going number one? Why, I don't care what Markelle Fultz did in Washington. Jason Tatum is 6'8". He's a 3-level scorer in college, and he's only going to get better.
I thought Fultz was number one. Watching him in Washington, I was like, he looked like a number one player. And like, I really liked Lonzo at UCLA. I remember we even watched that game against Oregon. I didn't think Lonzo should have gone second. I liked the way he slowed the pace down. I think that was more Magic being like, this kid can be a new me. And we all know Magic was not a good front office guy.
And LeVar Ball selling like LA Kid, the Lakers, and all of that stuff. I mean, it was foolish. Yeah, I mean, you should have got De'Aaron Fox or Jason Tatum. But Brandon Ingram.
I think Danny Ainge did a great job there. And I think Danny Ainge, like, it's very underrated, the Jaylen Brown pick. Because I remember Jaylen Brown at Cal, and I was like, they picked Jaylen Brown? And then you watch him, and he's fantastic. So I think that the things like that are where Danny Ainge keeps his job. He hasn't made the splashes that'll make them a contender, but I think it's the keeping Jay. And I don't think he's going to keep his job forever and be in there a very long time, but I think it buys him a couple more years.
And I think he's going to keep doing that, though. That's the thing. He's going to keep doing things that buys him time, because even in his mistakes, he makes mistakes around the fringes. It's like, oh, you didn't draft this person with the 12th pick, or you didn't move up to get this one guy that you kind of liked, but you knew you wanted Tatum, and you were going to take him first overall anyways. You convinced Philly that you didn't want him, and you might take Fultz, so you get some picks for the guy that you wanted. You made the smart move to get Jaylen Brown, because when Jaylen Brown got drafted, I'm like, okay. And then obviously it's worked out. But because he doesn't make the big mistake, but he also doesn't make the big move, I personally would not want him as the GM of my team, because I feel like we're going to be what the Hawks were back in the Mike Woodson, Coach Bud days. We're going to be in the playoffs. We might be a 2 seed one year. We got lucky, got a 1 seed that one year. We're going to be around that 3, 4, 5. Maybe we make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but we never feel like we're going to win a championship.
Yeah, I see them being that type of Hawks team. But is that better than becoming the Wizards? And they probably think so.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Wizards, and I can't think of their former GM's name, but I mean, he is all-time terrible, like all-time, like just god-awful. So, I mean, he's one of the people that keeps Danny Ainge employed, because you can just go fleece him.
I just think it's harder. Like, the NBA is a bell curve, and I think it's harder to get on that other side of the bell. Only few people have been able to do that, and that is the Golden States. Brooklyn just incredibly finessed, and like Toronto. And Toronto's was like GM masterpiece right there. And then so was, I would say, Golden State's, right? And Daryl Morey, I think, is a great GM as well. Whereas I think Brooklyn, that just kind of like fell into their GM's lap.
Oh, yeah, like that was more so KD, Kyrie, we want to go to New York, and we don't want to go play for the Knicks.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. But what I'm saying, it's hard to find GMs that really like make it all happen. Pelinka did a great job also, but it's hard to find GMs that can really put that together and make you this title contender instead of a fringe contender.
Man, and I tell you, nobody's been hurt by that more than Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Like they draft so well, but they're drafting so well, so close together, that the players haven't had time to make that grown man 25 jump yet to actually, have the 6, 7, 8, 9 years in the league to become like championship style players. They drafted Malik Beasley, who is a good basketball player. They got Michael Porter Jr., who is a good basketball player. Jamal Murray, Yoke. Like they've accumulated a lot of talent, but the talent is so close together, and some of it is so duplicable that you can't even build a full team around all of the talent that you're acquiring. And it's like, damn, you're honestly being too good at your job, but you're in Denver, so you can't get that splash free agent to come take you over the top. And I think that's why I like what Masai Ujiri did and what they did out in Golden State, where they built it internally through good drafting, and then they took their shots when it was available. Because, I mean, Danny, you keep doing that. You keep accumulating players and picks. But like you said, man, when has a big name free agent signed in Boston? Ray Allen. They almost had KD.
Horford was a free agent, right? And then so was Gordon Hayward and Kyrie.
Kyrie was a trade. Hayward was going to play for his college coach. And we didn't know what Jaylen Brown was going to be yet. We didn't know what Jason Tatum was going to be yet. That's Jaylen Brown's second year, Tatum's rookie year. And Al Horford, I mean, they can bring him back now if they want to.
I'm just saying, like, I think people would much more lean towards a Boston before they do a Denver. I think Denver is like worst case scenario because they're right on the fringes and all they need is that one guy, but that one guy's not going to come to Denver. And as much as like Paul Millsap has been a help there, Paul Millsap is not turning your team into that contender. He's just not.
Nah, James Harden was going to turn their team into a contender, but we fell in love with Bubble Jamal Murray.